The Invisible Man Who Built an Empire, Then Lost Everything in One. Afternoon. Ethan Brooks spent 12 years making other people rich. He never asked for credit, never demanded recognition, just showed up, worked hard, and believed loyalty mattered. Then, in the span of 20 minutes, a woman he'd never met signed a document that erased him. No investigation, no questions. Just gone. By sunset, he and his 6-year-old daughter were homeless, sitting in a car that wouldn't start, watching rain blur the windshield like tears they were both too tired to cry. If you're watching from somewhere warm tonight, drop your city in the comments below. Let's see how far Ethan's story travels. And if it moves you, hit that like button. This one's going to hurt before it heals. The email arrived at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. Ethan Brooks was 3 floors deep in the building's mechanical systems when his phone buzzed against his hip. He didn't check it immediately. His hands were buried in a tangle of wiring that had been installed wrong 6 months ago, and if he didn't fix it before the weekend, the entire executive floor would lose climate control. That would mean angry calls, overtime crews, and a mess that would take weeks to sort out. He'd been fixing other people's mistakes for 12 years. The phone buzzed again. Then again. Ethan wiped his hands on his work pants and pulled the device free. 3 messages from HR. His chest tightened before he even opened the first one. Report to Human Resources immediately. Do not return to your workstation. No context, no explanation, just the cold, bureaucratic tone of a company that had never bothered to learn his name. He stood there for a moment in the dim maintenance corridor, fluorescent lights humming overhead, and felt something shift inside him. A premonition, maybe, or just the instinct that comes from years of being invisible. When you're the person who fixes what breaks, you learn to sense when something's coming apart. He took the service elevator up. The HR office was on the 8th floor, in a part of the building Ethan rarely visited. Carpeted hallways, soft lighting, the kind of space designed for people who didn't get their hands dirty. A young woman with a tablet and a practiced smile met him at the door. "Mr. Brooks?" "That's me." "This way, please." She led him into a small conference room with glass walls and a table that could seat 8. Only 2 chairs were occupied. A man in his 50s with silver hair and a suit that cost more than Ethan made in a month sat on one side. Across from him, a woman Ethan didn't recognize, late 20s maybe, with sharp eyes and a folder open in front of her. "Have a seat," the man said without looking up. Ethan sat. "I'm Richard Kemper, Senior VP of Operations. This is Jessica Hale from Legal." Ethan nodded. His pulse was loud in his ears. Kemper slid a single sheet of paper across the table. "Your employment with Whitmore Industries is terminated effective immediately. You'll receive 2 weeks severance, prorated based on your years of service. Your benefits end today. Security will escort you out once we're finished here." The words didn't land at first. They hovered in the air like something foreign, something meant for someone else. "I'm sorry," Ethan said slowly. "There must be some mistake." "No mistake." Kemper's voice was flat, bored. "We're restructuring. Your position has been eliminated." "Eliminated?" Ethan's hands clenched on the table. "I'm the only facilities engineer on this shift. Who's going to—" "That's no longer your concern." Jessica Hale leaned forward slightly, her expression neutral. "Mr. Brooks, if you sign the termination agreement, you'll receive your severance within 10 business days. If you choose not to sign, the company reserves the right to withhold payment pending review." "Review of what?" Ethan's voice cracked. "I've never missed a day. I've never—" "The decision is final." Kemper stood, buttoning his jacket. "Security will meet you at your locker. You have 15 minutes to collect your personal belongings." And just like that, it was over. Ethan walked out of that room in a daze, his mind refusing to process what had just happened. 12 years. 12 years of early mornings and late nights, of fixing emergencies no one else wanted to touch, of keeping the building running while people like Kemper collected bonuses and promotions. Gone. A security guard, young, apologetic, waited by the service elevator. "Sorry, man," he muttered as they descended. "Orders." Ethan didn't respond. He couldn't. His locker was in the basement, in a narrow room that smelled like machine oil and old coffee. He opened it mechanically, pulling out a jacket, a spare pair of gloves, a photo of Mia taped to the inside of the door. She was 4 in the picture, gap-toothed and grinning, holding a dandelion she'd insisted was a flower. He peeled the photo free and slid it into his wallet. The guard walked him to the side exit, not the front doors where employees and visitors came and went, but the service entrance where deliveries arrived and trash left. It felt deliberate, humiliating. "Take care," the guard said quietly. Ethan stepped into the parking lot and stood there, blinking in the late afternoon sun. His truck was parked 3 rows back, dusty and dented, the check engine light perpetually glowing on the dashboard. He climbed inside and sat with his hands on the wheel, staring at nothing. His phone buzzed. A text from the school. Reminder: Mia's pickup is at 3:30 today. See you soon. He checked the time. 3:18. Ethan started the engine and drove. Mia was waiting on the front steps of the school when he pulled up, her backpack nearly as big as she was. She saw the truck and her face lit up, and for a moment, just a moment, Ethan could almost pretend everything was fine. "Daddy!" She scrambled into the passenger seat, struggling with the seatbelt until he reached over to help. "Guess what happened today?" "What happened, sweetheart?" "Lucy brought cupcakes for her birthday, and I got one with pink frosting, and Ms. Alvarez said my drawing was really good, and I want to show you when we get home, okay?" "Okay?" She chattered the whole way, her voice bright and full of a 6-year-old's unshakable optimism. Ethan listened, responded when he needed to, and tried not to think about the envelope in his glove compartment, the one he'd been avoiding for 3 days. Final notice in red letters across the top. They'd been late on rent twice already. The landlord had been patient, but patience had limits. Ethan had been counting on his next paycheck to cover it. Now there wouldn't be a next paycheck. He pulled into the apartment complex just after 4. It was a low-rise building on the edge of town, worn but clean, the kind of place where people worked hard and kept to themselves. Ethan had lived there for 4 years. It was the longest he'd stayed anywhere since Mia's mother left. He parked and helped Mia out, and that's when he saw it. The notice was taped to the door. Bright orange. Impossible to miss. Eviction notice, 72 hours to vacate. Mia tugged on his hand. "Daddy, what's that?" "Nothing, baby. Just a mistake." But it wasn't a mistake. He could see the landlord's signature at the bottom, the date stamped in the corner. Legal, binding, final. Ethan unlocked the door with shaking hands and ushered Mia inside. The apartment was small, 1 bedroom, a cramped kitchen, a living room with a couch he'd bought secondhand. But it was theirs. It was home. "I'm hungry," Mia announced, dropping her backpack by the door. "I'll make you something." He moved through the motions automatically, peanut butter and jelly, apple slices, a cup of milk. Mia sat at the kitchen table, swinging her legs and humming to herself, oblivious to the disaster unfolding around her. Ethan's phone buzzed again. A message from the bank. "Insufficient funds. Your account is overdrawn." He set the phone down and pressed his palms against the counter, breathing slowly. In, out, in, out. "Daddy, can we watch a movie tonight?" "Maybe, sweetheart." "The one with the princess?" "We'll see." She finished her snack and wandered into the living room, turning on the TV. Ethan stood in the kitchen, staring at the eviction notice still clutched in his hand, and tried to figure out what the hell he was going to do. He had $143 in his checking account. No job, no prospects, and 72 hours before he and his daughter were on the street. That night, after Mia was asleep, Ethan sat at the kitchen table with a notebook and a calculator, trying to make the numbers work. They didn't. Severance wouldn't come for 10 days, if it came at all. The security deposit on the apartment was gone, absorbed by previous late fees. He had no family to call, no friends with space to spare. His ex-wife had disappeared years ago, chasing something she never found, leaving him with a baby and a promise she didn't keep. He thought about shelters, about motels, about borrowing money he couldn't pay back. None of it made sense. By midnight, he gave up. He walked into the bedroom where Mia slept, curled around the stuffed rabbit she'd had since she was 2. Her breathing was soft and steady, her face peaceful in the glow of the nightlight. Ethan sat on the edge of the bed and watched her, and felt something inside him break. "I'm sorry," he whispered. She didn't wake. The next morning, Ethan packed what they couldn't leave behind: clothes, toiletries, Mia's favorite books. He moved quickly, methodically, before the weight of it could crush him. Mia watched from the couch, confused. "Where are we going?" "On an adventure." "What kind of adventure?" "You'll see." He loaded the truck while she brushed her teeth, shoving bags into the cab and the truck bed, trying to fit a life into a space meant for cargo. When there was nothing left to take, he locked the apartment door for the last time and helped Mia into the passenger seat. "Are we coming back?" she asked. "Not for a little while." "Oh." She looked out the window, her rabbit clutched to her chest. "Okay." They drove. Ethan didn't have a destination. He just needed to move, to put distance between them and the place that had stopped being home. They stopped at a fast food place for lunch. $1 menu, 2 burgers, shared fries. Mia thought it was a treat. "This is fun," she said, dipping a fry in ketchup. "Like a picnic." "Yeah, baby, like a picnic." By mid-afternoon, reality set in. The truck was running low on gas. Ethan had $87 left. He pulled into a public park and parked under a tree, the engine ticking as it cooled. "Can I play?" Mia pointed to a playground across the grass. "Sure. Stay where I can see you." She ran off, and Ethan sat in the truck with the windows down, watching her swing and climb, her laughter carrying on the breeze. Other kids played nearby, their parents watching from benches, and for a moment Ethan let himself imagine that he was just another dad at the park, that they'd go home soon, that everything was fine. But the sun was setting, and they had nowhere to go. That night, Ethan parked the truck in the corner of a grocery store lot, far from the entrance, where the lights didn't reach. Mia had fallen asleep in the passenger seat, her head against the window, the rabbit tucked under her chin. He reclined his seat as far as it would go and stared at the ceiling, listening to her breathe. This was temporary, he told himself. Just until he figured things out. A few days, maybe a week. He'd find work, day labor, something, anything. They'd be okay. But the lie felt thin even as he thought it. Rain started to fall around midnight, soft at first, then harder. It drummed on the roof of the truck, steady and relentless, and Ethan closed his eyes and tried to sleep. He couldn't. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed. A car pulled into the lot, headlights sweeping across the windshield before moving on. The world kept turning, indifferent to the man and the little girl trying to disappear inside it. Ethan reached over and adjusted the blanket around Mia's shoulders. She stirred but didn't wake. "I've got you," he whispered. "I promise." And in the darkness, with rain falling all around them, Ethan Brooks made a vow he didn't know how to keep. What? 50 miles away in a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows, Clara Whitmore signed the last document of the day and leaned back in her chair. She was 34 years old and worth more money than she could spend in 10 lifetimes. Whitmore Industries had been her grandfather's creation, her father's legacy, and now, after his sudden death 6 months ago, it was hers. She hadn't wanted it, but wanting and having were different things. Clara stood and walked to the window, looking out over the city. Lights stretched to the horizon, a glittering sprawl of steel and glass and ambition. Somewhere down there, people were living lives she'd never understand, working jobs that broke their bodies, raising children on wages that didn't stretch, hoping for something better that never came. She thought about that sometimes, wondered what it was like. Then she went back to her desk and signed more papers. Her assistant knocked softly. "Ms. Whitmore? The quarterly reports are ready for review." "Leave them. I'll look in the morning." "Of course." The door closed. Clara sat alone in the silence, surrounded by the trappings of power she'd inherited but never earned. She was good at her job, better than most people expected. But she wasn't naive. She knew what the board thought of her. A placeholder, a figurehead, the girl who got lucky. Let them think it. She opened her laptop and pulled up the latest financials. Revenue was up, costs were down, efficiency improvements across the board. Richard Kemper's division had cut labor expenses by 18% in the last quarter alone. Impressive. She made a note to commend him at the next meeting. And somewhere in the numbers, buried in a line item she'd never noticed, was a name: Ethan Brooks. Position eliminated, cost saved, problem solved. Clara closed the laptop and went home. The first week was the hardest. Ethan found work where he could, unloading trucks, moving furniture, anything that paid cash at the end of the day. The jobs were brutal, the hours long, and the money barely enough to cover gas and food. He couldn't afford a motel, couldn't afford anything beyond survival. So they stayed in the truck. Mia handled it better than he did. She thought it was an adventure, camping under the stars. Ethan didn't correct her. He just made sure she ate, made sure she stayed warm, made sure she didn't see him fall apart. During the day while he worked, she stayed at the public library. The staff were kind, patient, letting her sit in the children's section with her books and her rabbit. Ethan hated it, hated leaving her there, hated the look the librarians gave him when he picked her up, sweaty and exhausted. But it was safe. It was warm. And it was free. At night, they parked in different lots, grocery stores, rest stops, the far corners of parks. Ethan learned which places were safe, which ones had security that would knock on the window and tell them to move along. He learned to recognize the other people living in their cars, the ones who nodded in silent acknowledgement, sharing a reality no one wanted to name. Mia started asking questions. "When are we going home?" "Soon, baby." "I miss my bed." "I know." "Why do we sleep in the truck?" "It's just for a little while." She accepted the answers because she trusted him, and that trust was the heaviest thing Ethan had ever carried. Mas. 2 weeks in, the truck started making a noise. A grinding sound from somewhere deep in the engine, metal on metal, the kind of sound that meant something expensive was about to break. Ethan didn't have expensive. He had $34 and a quarter tank of gas. He drove carefully, avoiding highways, keeping the speed low. The noise got worse. On a Wednesday afternoon, the truck died in the middle of an intersection. Just quit. No warning. The engine sputtered, coughed, and went silent. Cars honked. Someone shouted. Ethan turned the key again and again, his hand shaking, but nothing happened. "Daddy?" Mia's voice was small. "It's okay. Just give me a second." He popped the hood and got out, waving apologetically at the cars swerving around him. Smoke rose from the engine block, thin and acrid. He didn't need a mechanic to tell him it was done. A police officer pulled up, lights flashing. "You can't stay here," the officer said. Not unkind, just matter of fact. "I know. You need to move the vehicle." "It won't start." The officer sighed. "I'll call a tow. You got somewhere it can go?" Ethan looked at Mia through the windshield. She was watching him, her rabbit pressed to her chest. "No," he said quietly. "I don't." The tow truck took the vehicle to an impound lot on the edge of town. The driver didn't charge for the tow, a small mercy, but getting it out would cost $200, plus whatever the repairs ran. Ethan didn't have $200. He signed the paperwork in a daze, took their bags from the truck bed, and walked away. They spent that night on a bench in the park. Mia fell asleep with her head in his lap, wrapped in every piece of clothing they had. Ethan sat awake, staring at the sky, feeling the last of his hope slip away. He had nothing left, no money, no home, no vehicle, no plan, just a little girl who believed he could fix anything, and the terrible knowledge that he couldn't. Morning came cold and gray. Ethan woke to Mia shivering against him, her lips faintly blue. Panic shot through him. He pulled her closer, rubbing her arms, breathing warmth against her hair. "I'm cold," she whimpered. "I know, baby, I know." He got them moving, walking to generate heat. They found a diner, and Ethan spent $6 on hot chocolate and toast, letting Mia sit in the warmth while he nursed a cup of coffee he couldn't afford. The waitress, older, with kind eyes, refilled his cup without asking. "Rough morning?" she said quietly. "Something like that." She glanced at Mia, then back at him. "You need anything?" The offer hung in the air. Ethan wanted to say yes, wanted to ask for help, for kindness, for anything that might make this easier. But pride, stupid and stubborn, held his tongue. "We're okay," he said. "Thank you." She didn't believe him, but she didn't push. They left when Mia finished her toast, walking back into the cold. That is fine. That afternoon, Ethan stood in line at a day labor office, waiting for work that might not come. Men filled the room, some young, some old, all of them carrying the same exhaustion. He recognized a few faces from other jobs, other lines. No one made eye contact. When his turn came, the man behind the desk barely looked up. Any experience with roofing? Some. Report to the site on Maple and 5th. 6 a.m. tomorrow. $30 for the day. $30. Ethan took the slip of paper and walked out. He found Mia at the library, curled in a beanbag chair with a picture book. She looked up when he approached, and her smile, small and tired, broke something inside him. "Did you find work?" she asked. "Yeah, baby, I did." "That's good." He sat beside her and she leaned against him, and they stayed like that until the library closed. Chum. Night fell. They walked through the city, two shadows among thousands, invisible to everyone but each other. Ethan found a sheltered alcove behind a closed restaurant, a place where the wind didn't reach. He spread their blankets on the ground and made a nest of fabric and warmth. Mia climbed in without complaint. "Tell me a story," she said. "What kind of story?" "A happy one." Ethan's throat tightened. He lay down beside her, pulling the blankets close, and searched for words that felt true enough to say out loud. "Once upon a time," he began softly, "there was a little girl who was braver than anyone knew." He talked until her breathing slowed, until sleep claimed her. Then he lay awake in the darkness, listening to the city hum around them, and wondered how much longer he could keep pretending that everything would be okay. Because the truth he couldn't say out loud, was that he was drowning, and he didn't know how to save them. The roofing job lasted 3 days before Ethan's body gave him a warning he couldn't ignore. His hands, raw and blistered from handling shingles without proper gloves, had started to bleed through the makeshift bandages he'd wrapped around them. His back screamed with every movement, muscles he'd forgotten he had, announcing their existence through waves of pain that made him catch his breath. But he kept working, because $30 a day was $29 more than nothing. On the 4th morning, he woke to find Mia burning with fever. She lay curled in the alcove behind the restaurant, her face flushed and damp, her breathing shallow and quick. Ethan pressed his hand to her forehead and felt the heat radiating from her skin. "Mia, sweetheart, can you hear me?" Her eyes fluttered open, glassy and unfocused. "I don't feel good, Daddy." Terror, cold and sharp, sliced through him. He'd been careful, so careful, keeping her warm, making sure she ate, checking her constantly. But careful didn't matter when you were living on the street. Careful didn't stop a 6-year-old's immune system from collapsing under the weight of cold nights and stress and fear she was too young to name. He gathered her in his arms, blankets and all, and started walking. The urgent care clinic was 14 blocks away. Ethan had passed it a dozen times, always looking away, knowing he couldn't afford what waited inside. But affordability didn't matter anymore. His daughter was sick, and nothing else existed beyond that single, consuming truth. The receptionist looked up when he pushed through the door, taking in his appearance. The work clothes stained with tar and sweat, the desperate eyes, the small body in his arms. "I need help," Ethan said. "My daughter has a fever." "Do you have insurance?" "No." "We require payment at time of service." "I don't—" His voice cracked. "Please. She's 6 years old. She's burning up." The receptionist's expression softened slightly. She glanced at Mia, then back at him. "Take a seat. Someone will be with you shortly." Ethan sat in the waiting room, holding Mia close, feeling her small body shiver against him. 20 minutes passed, then 40. Other patients came and went, called back by nurses while he remained invisible in his plastic chair. Finally, a nurse appeared. "Mia Brooks?" The examination room was small and bright and smelled like antiseptic. The doctor, a woman in her 50s with gray hair pulled back in a ponytail, was efficient and kind. "How long has she had the fever?" she asked, pressing a stethoscope to Mia's chest. "Since this morning, but she's been tired for a few days." "Any cough? Vomiting?" "No." The doctor listened, checked Mia's throat, felt the lymph nodes in her neck. "Upper respiratory infection. Common this time of year. I'll prescribe antibiotics and a fever reducer. Make sure she stays hydrated and gets plenty of rest. Rest. Hydration. Simple words that might as well have been instructions to fly. How much will the medicine cost? Ethan asked quietly. The doctor paused, her pen hovering over the prescription pad. She looked at him, really looked, and he saw recognition dawn in her eyes. The kind of recognition that came from seeing too many people in exactly his position. The generic version should run about $40, she said carefully. The pharmacy 2 blocks east sometimes offers assistance programs. Ask for Maria at the counter. She wrote the prescription, then added something else on a second piece of paper. This is for a social services referral. They might be able to help with temporary housing. Ethan took both papers with hands that shook. Thank you. Take care of her, the doctor said, then softer. And take care of yourself. At the front desk, the bill came to $180. Ethan had $47 in his pocket, everything he'd earned from the roofing job minus what he'd spent on food. I can pay $40 now, he said. I can pay the rest. We need payment in full before you leave. Please, my daughter needs... I'm sorry, those are the rules. Ethan stood there, feeling the world tilt beneath him. Behind him, Mia coughed weakly. He turned to look at her, slumped in a chair with her rabbit clutched to her chest, and something inside him shattered. Keep the 40, he said, his voice hollow. I'll figure something out. He picked Mia up and walked out into the cold morning air. The pharmacy Maria worked at was exactly where the doctor said it would be. Ethan explained the situation, showed the prescription, and waited while Maria disappeared into a back office. She returned 10 minutes later with a white paper bag. No charge, she said quietly. The manufacturer has a compassionate care program. You're covered. Ethan's eyes burned. Thank you. I don't... Thank you. Make sure she takes the full course, twice a day with food. He nodded, unable to speak. Back in the alcove, he gave Mia the first dose along with crackers and water from a gas station fountain. She swallowed obediently, then curled up against him, her body still radiating heat. Am I going to be okay? She whispered. Yes, baby. The medicine is going to help. You just need to rest. Where? The question hung between them. Where could a sick child rest when home was an alcove behind a restaurant, when safety was measured in hours before someone told them to move along? Ethan held her tighter and had no answer. While Ethan Brooks sat in an alley cradling his feverish daughter, Clara Whitmore sat in a conference room 60 floors above the city, listening to Richard Kemper present the quarterly efficiency report. Labor costs are down 18%, Kemper said, clicking through slides filled with graphs and numbers. We've eliminated redundancies, consolidated positions, and streamlined operations across all divisions. The savings are already reflected in this quarter's margins. The board members nodded approvingly. Clara watched from the head of the table, her expression neutral. And morale? She asked. Kemper barely paused. Within acceptable parameters. Meaning? Some expected resistance to change, nothing that impacts productivity. Clara made a note on her tablet. Something about Kemper's presentation felt off. Too smooth, too practiced, the numbers a little too perfect. But she couldn't identify the problem, and the board seemed satisfied. Excellent work, Richard, the CFO said. These improvements position us well for expansion. The meeting continued. Clara listened, contributed when expected, and filed away the vague unease for later examination. After the board dispersed, she returned to her office and pulled up the detailed efficiency reports. Pages of data, hundreds of line items, thousands of decisions that rolled up into percentages and profit margins. Somewhere in the numbers, invisible among the statistics, was the cost of what efficiency really meant. But Clara didn't see it. Not yet. That evening, her assistant reminded her about a charity gala scheduled for the weekend. The Children's Foundation benefit, Jennifer said, reading from her tablet. You're listed as a sponsor. They're expecting remarks. Clara sighed. What's the cause again? Homelessness prevention, supporting families in crisis. Fine, draft something appropriate. 3 minutes, emphasize community impact. Of course. Jennifer left, and Clara turned back to her computer, already forgetting the conversation. Charity events were part of the job. Write a check, make an appearance, say the right things. The work happened elsewhere, in organizations run by people who understood problems Clara only encountered in abstract. She believed in helping, genuinely. But helping from a distance was easier, cleaner. It didn't require confronting the actual faces behind the statistics. Her phone buzzed, a text from her college roommate, Rebecca. "Drinks tomorrow? Haven't seen you in forever." Clara hesitated, then typed back. "Busy week? Rain check?" The truth was, she was always busy. Work consumed everything. 16-hour days, endless meetings, decisions that affected thousands of people she'd never meet. Social life had become something she scheduled quarterly and canceled monthly. Rebecca replied with a sad face emoji. Clara set the phone down and returned to the efficiency reports, losing herself in numbers that made sense in ways people never did. By the weekend, Mia's fever had broken. The antibiotics worked, her appetite returned, and the color came back to her cheeks. Ethan felt the knot in his chest loosen slightly, though it never fully disappeared. They were still homeless, still living moment to moment. But Mia was getting better, and that was something. He found another day labor job, this time painting the interior of an office building. The work was easier than roofing, the pay the same. He showed up early, worked hard, and collected his $30 at the end of the day. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But it kept them fed. During the days Mia returned to the library, the staff had stopped asking questions, simply welcoming her with warm smiles and directing her to the children's section. Ethan suspected they knew. The way they sometimes gave Mia extra cookies at story time, the way they let her stay past closing if he was running late. Small mercies from people who saw what others chose to ignore. One afternoon, the head librarian, a woman named Patricia with silver hair and reading glasses on a chain, approached him when he came to pick Mia up. "Mr. Brooks, could I speak with you for a moment?" Ethan's stomach tightened. This was it. They'd been too visible, stayed too long. "Of course." Patricia led him to a quiet corner. "I want you to know that Mia is welcome here any time. She's a lovely child." "Thank you. I appreciate." "I also want you to know," Patricia continued gently, "that we have resources, information about shelters, food programs, employment services. If you ever need help finding something, please ask." Ethan's throat closed. She knew. Of course she knew. "We're managing," he said quietly. "I'm sure you are." Patricia's eyes were kind but sad. But managing and thriving aren't the same thing, especially for a child. "I know." "The offer stands, no judgment. Just help, if you want it." After she walked away, Ethan stood in the silence of the library stacks and let himself feel the weight of her words. He was managing, barely, and Mia was suffering for it in ways he couldn't fully protect her from. But what choice did he have? He collected Mia, who bounded over with a stack of books she wanted to check out. They left together, walking into the autumn dusk, and Ethan tried not to think about winter coming. 3 weeks after his termination, the severance check finally arrived. Ethan found it at the post office, forwarded from his old address to general delivery. He tore open the envelope with shaking hands and stared at the number. $2,300. It should have felt like salvation. Instead, it felt like an insult. 12 years of loyalty reduced to a number that wouldn't cover 2 months' rent anywhere in the city. But it was something. He cashed the check immediately, feeling the bills heavy in his pocket. That night, he splurged on a motel room, the first time Mia had slept in a bed in almost a month. She took a long bath, using all the tiny bottles of shampoo and soap, emerging pink and clean and smiling. "This is nice, Daddy." "Yeah, baby, it is." They ordered pizza, watched cartoons, pretended, just for one night, that everything was normal. In the morning, reality returned. Ethan did the math. Motel rooms cost $50 a night. At that rate, the severance would last 46 days. Then they'd be back where they started, only deeper into winter with even fewer options. He needed a real job. Something stable, with a regular paycheck. Something that would let him afford first and last month's rent on an apartment, security deposit, basic utilities. He started applying everywhere. Retail, food service, warehouse work. Anything that didn't require experience he didn't have. He filled out applications online at the library, using email addresses he'd created on free accounts, listing his phone number and hoping it wouldn't die before someone called. Days passed. Then a week. No responses. Ethan expanded his search, applying to jobs farther away, positions he was overqualified for, anything with an opening. He lied on applications, omitting Whitmore Industries entirely, creating gaps in his employment history that made him look unreliable. Still nothing. The problem, he realized, was that he was invisible. No address meant no stability. No references meant no credibility. And the gap between getting hired and getting paid meant even if someone offered him a job tomorrow, he'd still be homeless for at least 2 weeks while he waited for that first paycheck. The system wasn't designed to help people climb out. It was designed to keep them down. Back at Whitmore Industries, Clara started noticing inconsistencies. They were small at first, minor discrepancies in the efficiency reports, numbers that didn't quite match up when she cross-referenced different departments. She might have ignored them, written them off as clerical errors, except that they all seemed to flow through Richard Kemper's division. She pulled the original staffing reports from before the restructuring and compared them to current rosters. Positions eliminated. Departments consolidated. Workflows streamlined. All reasonable. All justified. Except one name caught her attention. Ethan Brooks. Facilities engineer, 12 years of service, terminated as part of efficiency improvements. Clara frowned. She pulled his personnel file, skimming through performance reviews. Excellent across the board. No disciplinary issues. Multiple commendations for solving critical problems. She checked the termination paperwork. Position eliminated, no cause listed. Then she looked at the facilities department's current structure. 3 new contractors had been hired to cover the eliminated positions, each billing at nearly twice what the former employees had cost. That didn't make sense. Clara made a note and moved on to other files. But the question nagged at her. Over the next week, she dug deeper, pulling records on other terminated employees. The pattern repeated. High performers let go, replaced by expensive contractors, or left unfilled while remaining staff absorbed the workload. The savings Kemper had presented weren't real. They were accounting tricks, moving costs from one column to another while gutting institutional knowledge and employee morale. Clara scheduled a meeting with Kemper. He arrived promptly, confident and composed. "Miss Whitmore, what can I do for you?" "Walk me through the facility's restructuring." "Of course. We identified several positions that could be consolidated or outsourced more cost-effectively. The savings have been substantial. Except you've hired contractors at higher rates." Kemper didn't miss a beat. "Short-term expense. Once we've stabilized the new structure, we'll renegotiate those contracts downward." "And the employees you terminated?" "Many had excellent reviews." "Performance in the past doesn't guarantee future value. We're positioning the company for long-term growth, which requires difficult choices." Clara leaned back in her chair. "Did any of the terminated employees file complaints? Request reviews?" "A few, all baseless. HR handled them appropriately." "I'd like to see those files." Something flickered across Kemper's face, just for a moment, too fast to name. "Of course, I'll have them sent over." After he left, Clara sat in the silence of her office and felt the unease crystallize into suspicion. Something was wrong. The complaint files arrived the next morning. Clara spent 3 hours reading through them, cross-referencing names with termination records, looking for patterns. Most were routine, people angry about losing their jobs, threatening legal action that never materialized, demanding severance they weren't entitled to. But a few stood out. One was from a woman named Sarah Chen, a senior accountant who'd been with the company 15 years. She'd filed a formal complaint claiming she'd been fired in retaliation for questioning expense reports from executive travel. Another was from Marcus Williams, a logistics coordinator who'd reported safety violations and been terminated 2 weeks later for performance issues that appeared nowhere in his previous reviews. And then there was a note about Ethan Brooks. Not a formal complaint, he'd never filed one. But there was an internal email from a facilities supervisor sent 3 days before Ethan's termination, praising his work on identifying and documenting irregularities in the building's security system installation. Irregularities that had cost the company hundreds of thousands in overcharges from a contractor who, Clara discovered with 15 minutes of research, was owned by Richard Kemper's brother-in-law. Clara sat back, her heart pounding. Ethan Brooks hadn't been fired because his position was redundant. He'd been fired because he'd noticed something he wasn't supposed to see, and Kemper had buried it under efficiency improvements and corporate restructuring. She pulled up Ethan's termination package. 2 weeks severance for 12 years of service. No cause listed. No appeal process offered. Clara thought about the man behind the name. 12 years of showing up, doing his job, probably never expecting anything except a fair shake. And he'd been erased with a signature she couldn't even remember giving. Her signature. The realization hit like a physical blow. She'd signed off on the terminations. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, approving Kemper's efficiency plan without questioning the details, trusting that the people beneath her were acting in good faith. She'd destroyed lives without even knowing their names. Clara stood and walked to the window, looking out over the city. Somewhere down there, Ethan Brooks was living with the consequences of her negligence, and she had no idea how to make it right. That evening, Clara did something she rarely allowed herself. She left the office at a reasonable hour and met Rebecca for drinks. They sat in a quiet bar downtown, craft cocktails and low lighting, the kind of place where Clara could almost pretend she was just another person instead of the face of a corporate empire. "You look tired," Rebecca said. "Long week." "It's always a long week with you." Rebecca sipped her martini. "When was the last time you did something that wasn't work?" Clara tried to remember and couldn't. "I don't know." "That's not healthy." "Probably not." They talked about inconsequential things, mutual friends getting married, vacations taken, movies Clara hadn't seen, but Clara's mind kept drifting back to the files on her desk, to names and numbers and lives disrupted. "Can I ask you something?" Clara said suddenly. "Of course. Do you think good intentions matter? If you hurt someone accidentally, does it count that you didn't mean to?" Rebecca set down her glass. "Where's this coming from?" "Just thinking about responsibility, what we owe each other." "I think intentions matter," Rebecca said slowly. "But so do actions. You can't undo harm just by feeling bad about it. You have to actually do something." Clara nodded, the words settling into her chest like stones. Later, alone in her apartment, a penthouse with views she never looked at, Clara sat on her couch and thought about Ethan Brooks. She could find him, track him down through HR records, last known address, whatever information existed in the company files. She could apologize, offer him his job back, write him a check that would fix the immediate problem. But that felt hollow, like buying absolution instead of earning it. The truth was, Ethan Brooks wasn't the only one. There were dozens like him, maybe more, casualties of a system Clara had inherited and perpetuated without question. One apology wouldn't fix that. She needed to understand what was really happening in her company, who was profiting from the cruelty, how deep the corruption ran, and then she needed to burn it out, regardless of who it destroyed in the process, even if it destroyed her. Clara pulled out her laptop and started digging. Winter arrived early that year. The first snow fell on a Tuesday morning, soft and deceptive, blanketing the city in white that would turn to gray slush by afternoon. Ethan woke to find frost on the inside of the windshield where he and Mia had slept in the truck, retrieved from impound with the last of his severance money and limping along on prayers and duct tape. Mia stirred, her breath visible in the cold air. "Daddy, I'm freezing." "I know, baby. Let's get you warmed up." They went to the library as soon as it opened, Mia's teeth chattering, her lips tinged blue despite the layers Ethan had wrapped her in. Patricia saw them come in and immediately ushered Mia to a heating vent, bringing her hot chocolate from the staff room. "This can't continue," she said quietly to Ethan. "I know. There are shelters, programs for families. I've tried. They're full. Waiting lists months long." "Then let me make some calls." Ethan wanted to say no, to insist he could handle it, but the words wouldn't come. He was out of pride, out of options, out of everything except the desperate need to keep his daughter alive. "Okay," he whispered. "Thank you." Patricia made calls. Ethan sat in the library and filled out more job applications and tried not to think about what would happen when the truck finally died for good. When Mia's coughing started again that afternoon, a wet, rattling sound that made Ethan's chest tighten, he knew they were running out of time. The medicine had helped before, but medicine didn't fix the root problem. And the root problem was that his 6-year-old daughter was living in a car in winter. That night, as snow continued to fall, Ethan made a decision. He would accept Patricia's help. He would swallow his pride, navigate the bureaucracy, do whatever it took to get Mia somewhere warm and safe. Even if it meant admitting he'd failed her. Even if it meant accepting that sometimes loving someone meant letting go of the illusion that you could save them alone. He held Mia close as she slept, her small body tucked against his chest, and whispered promises into her hair that he prayed he could keep. The morning Patricia called with news about a shelter placement, Ethan was standing in line at a food bank, Mia's hand tucked in his. The phone buzzed in his pocket, and he stepped aside, pressing it to his ear while keeping his eyes on his daughter. "Mr. Brooks? It's Patricia from the library. I have good news. There's a family shelter on the north side with an opening. They can take you and Mia tonight if you can get there by 6. Ethan's knees went weak. "Tonight? Are you sure?" "I'm sure. I spoke with the director myself. It's not permanent, 30 days maximum, but it's warm, it's safe, and they have resources to help you find more permanent housing." "I don't know what to say." "Thank you. Thank you so much." "Don't thank me. Just get yourself somewhere warm." Ethan hung up and looked down at Mia, who was watching him with those wide, trusting eyes that broke his heart daily. "Guess what, sweetheart?" "What?" "We're going to have a real bed tonight, and it's going to be warm." Her face lit up in a way he hadn't seen in weeks. "Really? Really?" They left the food bank line and spent the afternoon preparing, what little preparation was possible when your entire life fit in a duffel bag. Ethan drove the struggling truck across town, following Patricia's directions, watching the city change around them. The shelter was in an older neighborhood, brick buildings and chain-link fences, the kind of area that had seen better decades but still held on to dignity. The building itself was nondescript, a converted school with bars on the windows and a sign that simply read, "Hope House Family Services." Ethan parked and sat for a moment, staring at the entrance. This was admitting defeat, accepting that he couldn't do it alone, that he'd failed. But Mia was coughing again, a wet sound that rattled in her chest, and failure meant something different when your child was sick. He grabbed their bag and took her hand. "Ready?" She nodded. Inside, the shelter was warmer than anywhere they'd been in weeks. A woman at the front desk, young, with purple hair and kind eyes, looked up when they entered. "You must be Ethan and Mia. I'm Sophie. Patricia called ahead. Welcome." The intake process took an hour. Forms to fill out, rules to acknowledge, a medical screening that made Ethan's stomach churn with anxiety. But Sophie was patient, explaining everything carefully, never making him feel judged. "You'll be in room 12, she said finally, handing him a key. "Second floor, end of the hall. Dinner is at 6 in the common room. Breakfast at 7. We have a children's playroom that's open until 8, and there's a case manager who'll meet with you tomorrow to talk about next steps." Their room was small, 2 twin beds, a dresser, a window that looked out over the parking lot. But it was clean and warm and private, and when Mia saw the bed, she actually squealed with delight. "Can I pick which one?" she asked. "Absolutely." She chose the one by the window and immediately climbed on it, bouncing experimentally. "It's soft, Daddy." Ethan set down their bag and sat on the other bed, feeling the mattress beneath him, lumpy but real, and had to fight back tears. They'd made it. Not to safety, not to stability, but to something better than a car in winter. It was enough. For now, it was enough. That same afternoon, Claire Whitmore sat across from her company's head of legal, Michael Chen, and watched his face pale as she laid out what she'd discovered. "Richard Kemper has been systematically terminating employees who identified fraud," she said, sliding documents across the desk. "Overcharges from contractors he has personal connections to, falsified efficiency reports, retaliation disguised as restructuring, and I signed off on it without asking questions." Michael studied the papers, his jaw tight. "This is serious, Clara. If even half of this is true, it's all true. I've verified everything. Then we need to bring this to the board immediately." "No." Clara's voice was firm. Half the board has been benefiting from Kemper's arrangement. Contractor kickbacks, inflated budgets they skim from. If we go to them, they'll bury it. So what are you proposing? Clara leaned forward. I want to investigate every termination from the past year. I want to know who was fired, why, and whether it was legitimate. I want to identify every fraudulent contract and every dollar that was stolen. And then I want to present it all at once, publicly, in a way that can't be buried or ignored. That could destroy the company, or it could save it. Clara met his eyes. My grandfather built this company on integrity. My father maintained it. I inherited it, and I let it rot from the inside because I was too focused on profits to see what was happening to people. That ends now. Michael was quiet for a long moment. You realize this will cost you. Kemper has allies, powerful ones. They'll fight back. Let them. And the employees who were wrongfully terminated, some of them may sue. This could expose the company to massive liability. Then we deserve it. Claire's voice softened. I signed the orders that destroyed their lives, Michael. I don't get to hide from that because it's inconvenient or expensive. I need to make it right. Michael nodded slowly. Okay, I'll put together a team. But Clara, this is going to get ugly. I know. After he left, Clara sat alone in her office and pulled up Ethan Brooks's file again. She'd memorized the details by now: 12 years of service, consistently excellent reviews, terminated without cause 3 days after documenting contractor fraud. She tried to imagine what his life looked like now, where he was, what he was doing, whether he'd found another job or was struggling like she suspected so many others were. The guilt sat heavy in her chest, a physical weight she couldn't shake. But guilt without action was just self-indulgence. She needed to do more than feel bad. She needed to fix what she'd broken. Clara opened a new document and began drafting a plan. Well, at Hope House, Ethan and Mia settled into a routine that felt like luxury after weeks of chaos. Wake up, breakfast in the common room. Mia went to the shelter's childcare program while Ethan met with case managers, filled out housing applications, and continued his relentless job search. The other families in the shelter carried their own stories: layoffs, medical bankruptcy, domestic violence, addiction, simple bad luck compounded until it became disaster. Ethan heard fragments in the common room, saw the exhaustion in parents' eyes, recognized the same desperate determination he felt every morning. They were all fighting, all trying, all hoping that this time something would work. On his third day, Ethan met with a case manager named Robert, a man in his 60s who'd clearly heard every story and stopped judging years ago. Let's talk about employment, Robert said, reviewing Ethan's file. You've got solid experience in facilities management. Why aren't you getting callbacks? I don't know. I've applied everywhere. Robert tapped his pen against the desk. Mind if I'm blunt? Please. You've got a gap in your employment history and no current address. That's 2 red flags right there. And if you're listing Whitmore Industries, there might be an issue with references. Ethan's stomach dropped. What kind of issue? Sometimes when companies fire someone, they flag them in databases that other employers check. Not illegal, but it happens. Did you leave on bad terms? I was terminated without cause. They said it was restructuring. Did you sign a severance agreement? Yes. With a non-disparagement clause? Ethan thought back to the document he'd signed in shock, barely reading it. I think so. Robert nodded. That might be it. You can't say anything negative about them, but there's nothing stopping them from quietly making sure you don't get hired elsewhere. It's corporate blacklisting, and it's more common than people think. The betrayal hit fresh and sharp. It wasn't enough that they'd fired him. They'd made sure he'd stay unemployed, stay desperate, stay silent. What can I do? Ethan asked. Honestly, not much about the blacklisting, but we can work around it. There are employers who don't check those databases, usually smaller companies or nonprofits, and there are training programs that can help you pivot into a different field, start fresh. How long do those programs take? Depends. Some are a few weeks, some are months. Months. Ethan had 30 days in this shelter, maybe less if they needed the space for another family. He didn't have months. I need something now, he said quietly. Something that pays this week, not next month. Robert's expression softened with understanding. I get it. Let me make some calls. There's a temp agency that works with us sometimes, places people in day-to-day work. It's not stable, but it's immediate income while you figure out the longer term. Thank you. And Ethan? Robert waited until he looked up. This isn't your fault. The system is designed to keep people down once they fall. You're not failing, you're fighting a rigged game. The words should have been comforting. Instead, they just made Ethan angry. That evening, Mia came down with another fever. It started during dinner, her cheeks flushing pink, her appetite disappearing. By bedtime, she was burning up again, coughing so hard she couldn't catch her breath. Ethan stood in the shelter's office, panic rising in his throat, while Sophie called the on-site nurse. The nurse, a calm woman named Diana, examined Mia with practiced efficiency. Her infection came back, Diana said after listening to Mia's lungs. Did she finish the full course of antibiotics? Yes, every dose. Sometimes the first round isn't enough, especially if the immune system is compromised from stress. Diana looked at Ethan with sympathy. She needs to see a doctor, tonight, if possible. That cough sounds like it could be turning into pneumonia. The urgent care clinic wouldn't take them without payment. The ER would, but the bill would be catastrophic. Ethan stood paralyzed by impossible choices. Sophie stepped in. There's a free clinic 3 blocks from here. They're open until 9. Diana, can you call ahead? Already on it. 20 minutes later, Ethan was walking through cold darkness with Mia wrapped in blankets, following Sophie's directions to the clinic. The building was small, tucked between a laundromat and a corner store, with a hand-painted sign that read Neighborhood Health Partners. Inside, the waiting room was crowded with people who looked like him, tired, worried, holding sick children, or nursing injuries they couldn't afford to treat. A receptionist took Mia's name and told them to wait. They waited for 90 minutes. When the doctor finally saw them, a young man who introduced himself as Dr. Patel, he was thorough and unhurried, treating Mia with the same care he'd probably give a patient with premium insurance. Bacterial pneumonia, he confirmed after examining the x-rays. She needs stronger antibiotics and close monitoring. Can you bring her back in 3 days? Yes. And she needs rest, real rest, in a warm environment, no stress. Ethan wanted to laugh at the impossibility of that instruction. Instead, he just nodded. Dr. Patel wrote the prescription and then did something unexpected. He pulled out his wallet and handed Ethan 2 $20 bills. For the medication, he said quietly. Don't argue. Just take it. Ethan's throat closed. I can't. You can and you will. Your daughter needs that medicine, and I need to know she's getting it. Take the money. The bills felt like shame and grace in equal measure. Ethan took them. Thank you, he whispered. Take care of her, and take care of yourself. You can't pour from an empty cup. Walking back to the shelter with Mia drowsy against his shoulder, medication from the pharmacy clutched in his free hand, Ethan felt something shift inside him. All his life he'd believed in self-reliance, in earning what you got, in never taking charity. But that pride had nearly cost his daughter her health. Maybe accepting help wasn't weakness. Maybe it was just being human. While Ethan walked through the cold city night, Clara Whitmore sat in a boardroom preparing for war. She'd spent 2 weeks gathering evidence, building an airtight case with Michael Chen and a small team of investigators she trusted. They documented everything: fraudulent contracts, terminated employees, falsified reports, money trails that led straight back to Richard Kemper and 3 members of the board. Now it was time to act. The emergency board meeting had been called under the pretense of discussing quarterly projections. All 12 board members sat around the table, Richard Kemper among them, confident and relaxed. They had no idea what was coming. Clara stood at the head of the table, Michael beside her with a laptop and a stack of files. Thank you all for coming on short notice, Clara began. I know the agenda said quarterly projections, but we have a more urgent matter to address. She nodded to Michael, who connected the laptop to the projector. The first image appeared on the screen, a contract for building security upgrades, signed by Richard Kemper, billing $800,000 for work that cost $200,000. Over the past year, Clara said, her voice steady and cold, this company has been systematically defrauded by members of its own leadership. What I'm about to show you is the result of a comprehensive internal investigation. The room went very still. Richard Kemper's face remained neutral, but Clara saw the calculation in his eyes. She advanced to the next slide. This is a list of contractors who've received preferential treatment and inflated contracts. Notice the commonalities. Many are owned by family members or associates of company executives. Another slide. This is a list of employees terminated in the past 18 months, many of them high performers with excellent reviews. Cross-reference it with this list of complaints about financial irregularities, safety violations, or ethical concerns filed in the month before their terminations. The pattern was undeniable. One board member, Gerald Morrison, who'd served with Clara's father, leaned forward. Clara, what exactly are you alleging? I'm not alleging anything, Gerald. I'm stating facts. Richard Kemper and at least 3 members of this board have been using company restructuring as cover for fraud and retaliation. They've stolen millions from this company and destroyed the lives of dozens of employees who tried to expose it. That's absurd, Kemper said smoothly. Those terminations were part of legitimate efficiency improvements. Efficiency improvements that increase costs by 40% while gutting institutional knowledge? Clara cut him off. Efficiency improvements that coincidentally eliminated everyone who questioned your contractor relationships? She pulled out a specific file. Ethan Brooks, facilities engineer, 12 years of service. Fired 3 days after documenting that your brother-in-law's company was overcharging for security installation. Sarah Chen, senior accountant, 15 years. Fired 2 weeks after questioning executive expense reports. Marcus Williams, logistics coordinator. Fired after reporting safety violations in a warehouse managed by... Clara checked the file. A contractor owned by Gerald Morrison's son. Gerald's face went white. These aren't efficiency improvements, Clara continued. This is corruption, plain and simple. And I signed off on it because I trusted you, because I was too focused on profit margins to ask questions. That ends today. Richard stood abruptly. You can't prove any of this. Actually, I can. Michael pulled up another slide. Bank records, email trails, phone logs, all of it meticulously documented. We have everything, and it's already been turned over to the SEC and the U.S. Attorney's Office. The room erupted. Board members shouted over each other, some demanding explanations, others trying to distance themselves. A few simply sitting in stunned silence. Richard Kemper's carefully constructed composure cracked, his face flushing red. You self-righteous little girl, he snarled at Clara. You have no idea what you've just done. This company will be destroyed. This company was already being destroyed, Clara shot back, by you, by greed and corruption, and the assumption that you could treat people as disposable. I'm just making sure everyone knows it. She turned to address the full board. Effective immediately, Richard Kemper is terminated for cause. Gerald Morrison, David Chen, and Patricia Westwood are suspended pending further investigation. Michael Chen will serve as interim COO while we conduct a full audit of all company operations. And every employee who was wrongfully terminated will be contacted, offered reinstatement or appropriate compensation, and given a formal apology from this company. You can't do this, Richard said. I own 51% of this company, Clara replied coldly. I absolutely can. Security will escort you out. Don't bother collecting your things. They'll be shipped to you after we've finished documenting the evidence in your office. As if on cue, 2 security officers entered the boardroom. Richard stared at Clara with pure hatred. This isn't over. Yes, Clara said quietly. It is. She watched him leave, flanked by security, his career and reputation in ruins. She should have felt triumphant. Instead, she just felt tired. The other board members filed out in shocked silence. Michael began collecting the files, his expression grim. That went well, he said dryly. That was the easy part, Claire replied. Now comes the hard part. Which is? Making it right. She thought of all the names in those files, all the lives disrupted by greed she'd been too blind to see. Finding everyone who was hurt and actually fixing what was broken. Michael nodded. We'll need a team, HR, legal, probably some outside consultants. And we need to find Ethan Brooks. The facilities engineer? He was the first, the one who noticed the security contractor fraud. If he hadn't documented it, Clara's voice caught. He tried to do the right thing, and we destroyed him for it. I need to fix that. Personally. Clara, there are dozens of people in those files. You can't personally handle every case. I know, but I can handle this one. She met Michael's eyes. He worked here for 12 years, and I don't even know what he looks like. I signed the order that fired him without reading his file, without asking questions, without caring what it would do to his life. The least I can do is look him in the eye and apologize. Michael was quiet for a moment. I'll have HR track down his last known information. Thank you. After he left, Clara stood alone in the empty boardroom and looked at the evidence still displayed on the screen. Numbers and names and proof of institutional cruelty. She'd burned it all down, exposed the corruption, removed the perpetrators, committed to making amends. But she knew it wouldn't be enough. You couldn't undo the trauma of homelessness with a check. Couldn't erase the fear a child felt sleeping in a car. Couldn't restore the dignity stolen by people who treated human beings like line items on a budget. All she could do was try, and hope that somewhere, somehow, the people she'd failed would give her the chance to prove that she meant it. The news broke the next morning. Clara had expected media attention, but she'd underestimated how hungry the press was for a corporate scandal with a sympathetic villain. By noon, the story was everywhere. Major news networks, financial papers, social media. Billionaire CEO exposes corruption in own company, ran one headline. Whitmore heiress fires board members, promises. Restitution to fired workers, read another. Clara's phone rang constantly. Interview requests, statements from shareholders, angry emails from Richard Kemper's lawyers. She ignored most of it and focused on the work. Michael assembled a team to contact every wrongfully terminated employee. HR began processing reinstatement offers. Legal worked on settlement agreements for those who'd suffered demonstrable harm. And Clara herself drafted a public statement that her PR team begged her to soften. She refused. To everyone who was harmed by the actions of Whitmore Industries leadership, including myself, the statement read, I offer my deepest and most sincere apology. I failed in my responsibility to ensure this company operated with integrity. I signed termination orders without adequate review. I trusted people who were stealing from you and from this organization. Those failures are mine to own, and I am committed to making them right. Every employee who is wrongfully terminated will be contacted directly. We will offer reinstatement where possible, fair compensation where it is not, and full transparency about what happened and why. This company was built on a promise to treat people with dignity and respect. We broke that promise. I broke that promise. And I will spend however long it takes to restore it. The statement went viral. Public reaction was mixed. Some praised her courage. Others called it a publicity stunt. A few pointed out, correctly, that apologies didn't pay bills or undo trauma. Clara read every comment, every criticism, letting the weight of it settle into her bones. This was accountability. It wasn't supposed to feel good. At Hope House, Ethan knew nothing about any of it. He spent his days caring for Mia, whose pneumonia was slowly improving with the stronger antibiotics. He met with the temp agency Robert connected him with and got placed on a warehouse crew, 4 days a week, $15 an hour. It wasn't enough to rent an apartment, but it was enough to start saving. In the evenings, he sat with other families in the common room, sharing meals and stories and small moments of normalcy. He helped a single mother fix her car's radiator, taught another father how to patch drywall, found community in the shared struggle of people trying to climb out of holes they hadn't dug. Mia was thriving in the shelter's childcare program, making friends, laughing again. The fear had left her eyes, replaced by something Ethan had been terrified he'd never see again, simple childhood joy. "Daddy, look what I made," she said one evening, showing him a crayon drawing of a house with a red door and yellow windows. "That's beautiful, sweetheart. What is it?" "It's where we're going to live someday. It has a yard and my own room and a place for Mr. Rabbit." Ethan pulled her close, pressing his face into her hair so she wouldn't see the tears in his eyes. "We're going to get there," he promised. "I don't know when, but we'll get there." And for the first time in months, he actually believed it might be true. The letter arrived on a Thursday morning, delivered to Hope House, and forwarded to Ethan by Sophie, who handed it to him with a curious expression. "This came for you," she said. Return address is Whitmore Industries. Ethan's stomach dropped. He stared at the envelope, the company logo embossed in the corner, and felt the familiar mix of anger and dread that came with anything connected to that place. You okay? Sophie asked. Yeah, just wasn't expecting this. He waited until he was alone in his room before opening it. His hands shook as he unfolded the single page, typed on heavy paper with a signature at the bottom he didn't recognize. Dear Mr. Brooks, it began. We are writing to inform you that Whitmore Industries is conducting a comprehensive review of all employee terminations from the past 18 months. Your case has been flagged for immediate attention. We would like to meet with you at your earliest convenience to discuss your employment history and potential remedies. Please contact our office to arrange a meeting. We understand this may be unexpected and potentially concerning. Please be assured that this outreach is made in good faith as part of our commitment to correcting past wrongs. It was signed by Michael Chen, General Counsel. Ethan read it 3 times, trying to parse the corporate language for hidden traps, potential remedies, correcting past wrongs, words that sounded hopeful but felt dangerous. He thought about ignoring it. He'd spent months trying to move forward, trying to build something from nothing. Going back felt like opening a wound that had barely begun to heal. But the letter mentioned his employment history, and Ethan still didn't know why he'd really been fired. That night, after Mia was asleep, he borrowed Sophie's office phone and called the number on the letterhead. A woman answered on the second ring, Michael Chen's office. This is Ethan Brooks. I received a letter about a meeting. Mr. Brooks, yes. Thank you for calling. Mr. Chen has asked me to coordinate a meeting at your convenience. Would you be available tomorrow afternoon? We can send a car to pick you up if transportation is an issue. The efficiency of it unsettled him. What is this about? Mr. Chen will explain everything when you meet. I can assure you this is not adversarial. We simply want to talk. Ethan hesitated. Every instinct told him to hang up, to let sleeping dogs lie. But beneath the fear was something else, a burning need to know why his life had been turned upside down. Tomorrow at 2, he said finally. But I don't need a car. Just give me the address. She did, and he wrote it down on a scrap of paper, committing it to memory. After he hung up, Sophie knocked on the doorframe. Everything all right? I don't know, Ethan said honestly. I guess I'll find out tomorrow. Clara spent the morning before Ethan's meeting reviewing his file for the dozenth time. She'd memorized every detail, his hire date, his performance reviews, the commendations from supervisors who praised his work ethic and problem-solving skills. She'd read the email he'd sent to his supervisor about the security installation irregularities, professional and thorough, raising concerns without accusations. And she'd read the termination order she'd signed, reducing 12 years of loyalty to a single line, position eliminated as part of operational restructuring. Michael entered her office carrying coffee. He'll be here in an hour. You ready? No, Clara admitted. How do you apologize for destroying someone's life? Honestly and without excuses. Michael set the coffee on her desk. And then you offer to fix what you can fix and accept that it won't be enough. What if he's angry? Then he's angry. He has every right to be. Clara nodded, though her stomach churned with anxiety. She'd faced down hostile boards, aggressive competitors, shareholders demanding her resignation. But none of that compared to the prospect of looking Ethan Brooks in the eye and admitting what she'd done. At 1:50, her assistant buzzed. Mr. Brooks is here. Send him in. Clara stood, smoothing her suit jacket, then realized the formality was ridiculous and took it off, draping it over her chair. She wanted to meet him as a person, not as a CEO hiding behind corporate armor. The door opened. Ethan Brooks looked nothing like Clara had imagined. She'd pictured someone broken, defeated, worn down by months of hardship. The man who walked into her office was thin and tired, yes, with shadows under his eyes and clothes that had seen better days, but he held himself with quiet dignity, his shoulders straight, his gaze direct. He looked like someone who'd been through hell and refused to stay there. Mr. Brooks, Clara said, moving from behind her desk. Thank you for coming. I'm Clara Whitmore. They shook hands. His grip was firm despite the bandages she could see peeking out from under his sleeves. "Please, sit." Clara gestured to the chairs by the window, deliberately choosing the informal seating rather than the power dynamic of her desk. "Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water?" "I'm fine." Ethan sat stiffly, clearly uncomfortable. "Your lawyer's letter said you wanted to discuss my employment history." "Yes, but first, I owe you an apology." Clara sat across from him, forcing herself to maintain eye contact. "Mr. Brooks, may I call you Ethan?" "Sure." "Ethan, I'm the person who signed the order terminating your employment. I did it without reading your file, without understanding why you were being let go, without asking any questions. I trusted people I shouldn't have trusted, and you paid the price for my negligence. I am deeply, profoundly sorry." Ethan's expression didn't change. "Why now? Why am I here?" "Because I recently discovered that you weren't fired as part of legitimate restructuring. You were fired because you reported contractor fraud. Your supervisor documented it in an internal email. You'd identified hundreds of thousands of dollars in overcharges from a security installation company. 3 days later, you were terminated." She watched the information land, saw his jaw tighten. "The executive who ordered your termination was Richard Kemper. The security company was owned by his brother-in-law. You were fired for doing your job with integrity, and I signed off on it without question." Clara's voice cracked slightly. "What happened to you after you were let go?" Ethan was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. "I lost my apartment. My truck broke down. My daughter and I lived in that truck for a month before it died completely. We slept in parks, in shelters when we could get in. She got sick, pneumonia, and I couldn't afford to take her to the doctor. We're in family housing now, temporary, but it's better than where we were." Clara felt like she'd been punched. She'd known, abstractly, that wrongful termination caused hardship. But hearing the specifics, a child with pneumonia, sleeping in a truck, made it viscerally, devastatingly real. "Your daughter," she said quietly. "How old?" "6. Her name's Mia." 6 years old, the same age as Clara's niece, who lived in a house with a playroom and a nanny and every advantage money could buy. "I'm so sorry," Clara whispered. "Ethan, I'm so incredibly sorry." "Are you?" His voice had an edge now. "Or are you just sorry it became public? Sorry it made your company look bad?" The accusation stung because part of it was true. Clara had spent weeks worried about the company's reputation, about shareholder reactions, about legal liability. But somewhere in the midst of all that, she'd started to see the people behind the numbers. "Both," she admitted. "I'm sorry it happened, and I'm sorry I didn't see it until it was too late. I can't undo what's been done, but I can try to make it right." "How?" "We want to offer you your job back, with full back pay from your termination date. Health insurance reinstated retroactively, so any medical expenses you incurred are covered. And a formal letter of apology that makes it clear you were wrongfully terminated, suitable for any future employment applications." Ethan stared at her. "You want me to come back? To work for the company that destroyed my life?" "I want to give you the choice," Clara said. "If you don't want to come back, I understand completely. We'll still provide the back pay and the letter, but if you do want to return, you'll have your old position and the respect you should have had all along. And if I sue you instead? Then you sue us. You'd have every right." Clara met his eyes. "I'm not trying to buy your silence, Ethan. The apology letter doesn't include a non-disclosure agreement. You can tell anyone anything about what happened to you. I just want to give you back what was taken." Ethan looked away, staring out the window at the city below. Clara could see the conflict playing across his face, anger warring with pragmatism, pride fighting need. "I need to think about it," he said finally. "Of course. Take whatever time you need." Clara pulled a card from her pocket. "This is my direct number, not my assistant, not my office. Me. Call any time." He took the card without looking at it. "There's one more thing," Clara said. "The people who did this to you, Richard Kemper and several board members, have been fired. I've turned all the evidence over to federal prosecutors. They're facing criminal charges for fraud and corruption. It won't undo what happened, but at least there's accountability." "Oh, good," Ethan said quietly. "That's good." They sat in silence for a moment. Clara wanted to say more, to somehow convey the depth of her regret, but words felt inadequate. "Can I ask you something?" Ethan said. "Anything." "That letter mentioned dozens of people. Am I the only one you're meeting with personally?" Clara hesitated, then decided on honesty. "No, but you're the first. Your case, the timing, the circumstances, it was the thread that unraveled everything. When I saw what happened to you, I started looking deeper. So yes, I'm meeting with others, but I wanted to meet with you first." Ethan nodded slowly. "I need to go. My daughter. I need to pick her up." "Of course." Clara stood when he did. "Thank you for coming, for hearing me out. I know that took courage. Desperation, maybe." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "But sure, let's call it courage." He walked to the door, then paused with his hand on the handle. "Miss Whitmore?" "Clara, please." "Clara." He turned back. "That apology you gave, did you mean it?" "Every word." "Then prove it, not just to me, to everyone you fired. Show them that words aren't just words." "I will," Clara said. "I promise." After he left, Clara sat back down and let herself shake. Michael appeared in the doorway a few minutes later. "How did it go?" "He has a 6-year-old daughter who got pneumonia while they were homeless." Clara's voice was thick. "Because of me. Because I signed a piece of paper without reading it." Michael sat across from her. "You didn't know." "I should have known. That's the whole point. I should have asked questions, should have cared enough to understand what those signatures meant." She looked up at him. "We're doing this for everyone, Michael. Every single person in those files. Whatever it costs, whatever it takes." "I know. And we're going to make sure it never happens again." "How?" Clara stood and walked to the window, looking out over the city where dozens of people she'd wronged were trying to rebuild their lives. "We're going to change everything. The way we hire, the way we fire, the oversight on executive decisions. We're going to build systems that make it impossible for someone like Kemper to abuse power. And we're going to be transparent about all of it." "The board won't like that." "Then they can leave. I own controlling interest. I don't need their approval." Clara turned back to him. "My grandfather built this company on a promise that work should be dignified, that employees matter, that profit and principle can coexist. Somewhere along the way, we forgot that. I forgot that. No more." Michael smiled slightly. "You know, when you took over, everyone thought you'd be a figurehead. Keep things running, don't rock the boat." "I know. They were wrong." "Yeah," Clara said quietly. "They were." Ethan walked out of Whitmore Industries in a daze, Clara's business card heavy in his pocket. The whole meeting felt surreal. The apology, the job offer, the promise of back pay. Part of him wanted to believe it. The larger part remembered too well how easily corporate promises turn to dust. He took the bus back to Hope House, watching the city pass by the window. How much back pay would they actually give him? Enough to rent an apartment, put down a deposit, buy Mia new clothes that fit properly? The possibility felt dangerous. Hope had a way of hurting when it didn't pan out. At the shelter, he found Mia in the playroom, building an elaborate tower with another girl her age. She looked up when he entered, her face lighting up. "Daddy, look how tall!" "That's amazing, sweetheart." She went back to her building, and Ethan sat on the edge of the room, watching her play. This was what mattered, not corporate apologies or job offers or justice. Just making sure that little girl could be a kid again, could laugh and play and not worry about where she'd sleep or whether there'd be food. Sophie found him there 20 minutes later. "How'd the meeting go?" "Strange," Ethan said. "They offered me my job back, said I was fired for reporting fraud." "Are you going to take it?" "I don't know. Part of me wants to tell them to go to hell. Part of me knows I can't afford to." Sophie sat beside him. "Can I give you some unsolicited advice?" "Please." "Take the meeting, accept the apology, get the back pay, and then decide what you want to do next. You don't owe them your future just because they're trying to fix their past." "What if it's just PR? What if they're trying to look good and then they screw me over again? Then you'll deal with it. But Ethan, you can't let fear of being hurt again stop you from accepting help. That's just another way of staying stuck." He knew she was right. He'd been living in survival mode so long that trust felt like a luxury he couldn't afford. But maybe that's exactly what he needed to relearn, how to accept that people could surprise you, could choose to do better. That night, Mia asked him why he seemed distracted. Just thinking about work stuff, baby. Did you get a new job? Maybe. We'll see. She studied him with those two wise eyes. Is it a good job? I think it might be. Then you should take it. She said it with such simple confidence, as if the decision was obvious. So we can get a house with a red door. Ethan pulled her close, breathing in the scent of the shelter's donated shampoo in her hair. Yeah, baby, so we can get that house. Over the next week, Clara met with 8 more former employees. Each meeting was different. Some people were angry, shouting their pain and frustration in her office while she sat and absorbed it. Some were cautiously hopeful, willing to listen to her apology, but waiting to see if actions followed words. A few were simply broken, worn down by months of unemployment and hardship until they had nothing left but exhausted acceptance. Clara listened to all of them, heard their stories, learned what her signature had cost. Sarah Chen, the accountant, had lost her house and moved in with her elderly mother. Marcus Williams, the logistics coordinator, had developed anxiety so severe he could barely leave his apartment. A woman named Jennifer Ortiz had been 8 months pregnant when she was fired. She'd given birth without insurance and was now drowning in medical debt. Each story was a weight Clara added to the growing burden she carried. Each apology felt inadequate. Each offer of restitution felt like too little, too late. But she kept going. Michael coordinated settlements, HR processed reinstatements. The legal team worked with affected employees to resolve outstanding issues, health insurance claims, credit damage, legal fees. And slowly, painfully, Whitmore Industries began the process of becoming something better than it had been. The press coverage continued. Some outlets praised Clara's transparency, others questioned her motives. A few dug into her background, questioning whether she was truly committed or simply trying to salvage her inheritance. Clara ignored most of it and focused on the work. One evening, as she sat in her office long after everyone else had gone home, her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Then, on impulse, she picked up. This is Clara. Ms. Whitmore? It's Ethan Brooks. Her heart jumped. Ethan, thank you for calling. How are you? I've been thinking about your offer. His voice was careful, measured. I have some conditions. I'm listening. First, I want the back pay immediately. Not in 2 weeks, not pending review. I need it now to secure housing for my daughter. Done. I'll have the check cut tomorrow. Second, if I come back, I want a contract, not at-will employment. A contract that says exactly what I'll be doing, what I'll be paid, and what grounds you'd need to fire me. In writing. Absolutely reasonable. We can have that drafted this week. Third, I want to meet the people I'll be working with. I want to see the facilities department, talk to my supervisor, understand what's changed since I left. I'm not walking back into a situation where I'm set up to fail. We'll arrange that. Anything else? Ethan was quiet for a moment. Yeah, one more thing. I want you to promise me that what happened to me doesn't happen to anyone else. That you're not just fixing this because it went public, but because you actually give a damn about the people who work for you. Clara closed her eyes. I can't promise perfection, Ethan. I'm going to make mistakes. But I can promise you that I see now what I was blind to before. That people aren't line items on a budget. That every decision we make affects real lives. And I can promise that I'll spend the rest of my career trying to build a company that actually lives up to the values my grandfather founded it on. Okay, Ethan said quietly. Then I'll come back. On those conditions. Thank you, Clara breathed. You won't regret this. I hope not. A pause. Ms. Whitmore, Clara, I need you to understand something. I'm not doing this because I forgive you. I'm doing it because my daughter deserves stability, and this job can give her that. The forgiveness part, that's going to take time. I understand, and I'll earn it, however long it takes. After they hung up, Clara sat in the silence of her office and felt something shift inside her. This was what accountability looked like. Not grand gestures or public apologies, but concrete actions that changed real lives. She pulled out her laptop and began drafting new policies. Employee protections. oversight committees, transparent promotion and termination processes, systems that would make another Richard Kemper impossible. It was past midnight when she finally went home, but for the first time in months, she felt like she was doing something that mattered. The check arrived at Hope House 3 days later, delivered by courier in a security envelope. Ethan signed for it with shaking hands and stared at the amount. $43,200, back pay for the months he'd been unemployed, retroactive health insurance coverage, compensation for damages. All of it documented in a letter that explained exactly what each amount represented. He sat on his bed, staring at the numbers, and started to cry. It was more money than he'd ever had at once. More than enough to rent an apartment, buy furniture, get Mia everything she needed. More than enough to stop being afraid every single day. Sophie knocked on his door. "Ethan, you okay?" He showed her the check, unable to speak. She looked at it, then at him, and smiled. "Looks like that red doorhouse is getting closer." "Yeah," he managed. "Yeah, it is." That evening, he took Mia to a real restaurant. Not fast food, but a family place with tablecloths and a kids' menu with pictures. She ordered chicken fingers and hot chocolate, her eyes huge with delight. "Is this a celebration?" she asked. "Yeah, baby, it is." "What are we celebrating?" Ethan looked at his daughter, healthy and happy and safe, and felt his heart might burst. "We're celebrating new beginnings and making sure you never have to be cold or hungry or scared again." Mia grinned, chocolate on her upper lip. "I like new beginnings." "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." Later that night, after Mia was asleep, Ethan sat at the small desk in their room and composed an email to Clara Whitmore. He'd been thinking about what to say, how to acknowledge what she'd done without pretending everything was suddenly fine. "Dear Clara," he typed, "I received the check, thank you. It means more than you probably realize. Not just the money, but the acknowledgement that what happened was wrong. I'm still not sure how I feel about coming back to work for Whitmore Industries, but I appreciate that you're trying to do the right thing. That matters. I'll be in touch about the contract and the site visit. In the meantime, please know that this money is going to change my daughter's life. Whatever else happens, I'm grateful for that. Ethan." He read it twice, then hit send before he could second-guess himself. The response came 15 minutes later. "Ethan, I'm glad the check arrived safely. Take all the time you need with the decision about returning. The job will be waiting whenever you're ready, or not at all if that's what you decide. What matters most is that you and Mia are okay. I meant what I said about earning your trust. I'll keep working on that, one day at a time. Clara." Ethan stared at the message, then closed his laptop and looked out the window at the city lights. Somewhere out there was the apartment he'd start looking for tomorrow, the life he was going to build for his daughter, the future that had seemed impossible just weeks ago. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was something, and sometimes something was enough. The apartment Ethan found was on the second floor of a quiet building 20 minutes from Whitmore Industries. It had 2 bedrooms, a kitchen with actual counter space, and windows that let in morning light. The landlord, a middle-aged woman named Mrs. Chen, asked for first and last month's rent, plus a security deposit, then looked at Ethan's bank statement and employment contract and said yes without hesitation. "When can you move in?" she asked. "Tomorrow?" Ethan couldn't quite believe it was real. "Tomorrow works. I'll have the keys ready by noon." Walking back to Hope House, Ethan felt lighter than he had in months. He found Mia in the playroom and knelt down to her level. "Remember that house you drew, with the red door?" She nodded, her eyes wide. "I found us one. Well, it has a blue door, but we can paint it red if you want. It has your own bedroom and a kitchen where we can cook real food, and it's ours. Just ours." Mia stared at him for a long moment, then threw her arms around his neck so hard she nearly knocked him over. "Really? Really truly? Really truly?" She started crying, happy tears that soaked into his shirt, and Ethan held her tight, feeling his own eyes burn. That night, they told the other families at Hope House. There were congratulations and genuine happiness, but also a kind of wistfulness from people still waiting for their own breakthrough. Ethan understood. He'd been there just days ago, watching others leave while he stayed stuck. "You give people hope," Sophie told him quietly. They see you getting out, and they believe they can too. I got lucky. Maybe. But you also didn't give up. That matters. The next day they moved into the apartment with help from Robert and two other fathers from the shelter. There wasn't much to move: their bags, some donated furniture Sophie had arranged, a few kitchen supplies. But it was enough. Mia ran through the empty rooms, her laughter echoing off bare walls, claiming the smaller bedroom as hers and immediately planning where everything would go. "Mr. Rabbit gets the shelf by the window," she announced, "and I want the walls to be yellow, like sunshine." "We can do that," Ethan said, his throat tight. That first night in their new place, he made spaghetti on the stove while Mia set the table, a card table and folding chairs, but theirs. They ate together in their own kitchen, and afterward Mia took a bath in their own bathroom, and Ethan tucked her into a bed that would be hers every night. "Daddy?" she said sleepily. "Are we safe now?" The question broke his heart. She was 6 years old. She shouldn't have to ask if she was safe. "Yeah, baby, we're safe now." "Good," she yawned, clutching Mr. Rabbit. "I like it here." "Me too, sweetheart." After she fell asleep, Ethan sat in the living room in the dark, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of their new home. The refrigerator humming, the radiator clanking, footsteps from the apartment above. Normal sounds, safe sounds. He pulled out his phone and found Clara's last email, stared at it for a long moment. Then he started typing. "I'm ready to talk about coming back. Let's set up that site visit." The facilities department at Whitmore Industries had changed in Ethan's absence. New equipment, reorganized workspaces, and faces he didn't recognize. Clara met him at the entrance herself, dressed casually in slacks and a sweater instead of the formal suit she'd worn before. "Thank you for coming," she said. "I thought we'd start with a tour, then you can meet the team." "Sounds good." They walked through the building, Clara explaining the changes that had been implemented. New safety protocols, better equipment, a digital system for tracking maintenance requests that actually made sense. "We hired a consultant to review everything," she said. "Took their recommendation seriously. Your old supervisor, Tom, is still here. He actually helped design a lot of these improvements." Tom was waiting in the main facilities office, a burly man in his 50s with grease-stained hands and a warm smile. He stood when he saw Ethan. "Brooks." "Damn, it's good to see you." They shook hands, and Ethan saw genuine relief in Tom's eyes. "I'm sorry," Tom said quietly, "about what happened. I tried to fight it, tried to tell them you were the best engineer we had. They wouldn't listen." "It wasn't your fault." "Still, I should have done more." Clara stepped back, giving them space. Tom showed Ethan around, introducing him to the new team members, explaining the current projects. The work was familiar but better organized, with actual support and resources instead of constant understaffing. "If you come back," Tom said, "things will be different. We have a voice now, say direct line to management. They actually listen when we say something's wrong." "That's new." "Yeah. Miss Whitmore, Clara, she's been here, in the basement, on the roof, seeing what we actually do. She gets it now." After the tour, Clara took Ethan to a conference room where Michael Chen was waiting with a contract. "Everything we discussed," Michael said, sliding the document across the table. 3-year term, clearly defined responsibilities, specified grounds for termination, and a clause that says any changes to your position require your written consent. Ethan read through it carefully. It was fair, more than fair. The salary was 20% higher than what he'd been making before, with full benefits and guaranteed annual reviews. "There's one more thing," Clara said. She pulled out another document. "This is an agreement that says if Whitmore Industries ever tries to retaliate against you for any reason, speaking to press, filing complaints, anything, you'll receive 1 year's salary as severance and a formal letter exonerating you. It's my insurance to you that we mean what we say." Ethan stared at her. "You're giving me leverage against your own company. I'm giving you protection and peace of mind." Clara met his eyes. "I know trust has to be earned, Ethan. This is how I'm trying to earn it." He looked down at the contracts, at the careful language that protected him instead of the company, and felt something shift in his chest. "Okay," he said. "I'm in." They signed the papers right there. When it was done, Tom clapped him on the shoulder. "Welcome back, Brooks. We've got a hydraulic system on the 9th floor that's been giving us hell. Bet you can figure it out." Ethan smiled, genuinely smiled, for the first time since walking into the building. "Yeah, I probably can." Ethan's first day back was strange. Familiar hallways now felt different, like visiting a place you'd lived years ago and finding it changed in small, indefinable ways. He arrived early, changed into his work clothes in the same locker room where he'd cleaned out his belongings months before, and found his old toolbox waiting for him. Tom had kept it, saved it when everything else was being cleared out. "Figured you'd want it back someday," Tom said gruffly. The work itself was exactly what Ethan needed. Concrete problems with concrete solutions. A broken valve here, a faulty wire there, systems that made sense and responded to competence. By lunch, he'd fixed the hydraulic issue and identified 3 other potential problems before they became emergencies. He ate in the employee cafeteria, sitting alone by choice, watching the building operate around him. People came and went, caught up in their own concerns, and nobody paid attention to the facilities engineer in the corner. He'd always been invisible here, but now it felt different, like invisibility was a choice instead of a condition. Clara found him there, carrying her own lunch tray. "Mind if I sit?" Ethan gestured to the empty chair. She sat, and for a moment they ate in silence. "How's the first day?" she asked finally. "Good. Different, but good." "Different how?" "I don't know, like I'm allowed to be here instead of just tolerated." Clara nodded slowly. "That's what we're trying to build. A place where people are valued, not just utilized." "It's working, at least from what I've seen." They talked about small things, the building's quirks, upcoming maintenance projects, Mia's adjustment to their new apartment. It was surprisingly easy, this conversation. No corporate distance, no careful PR language, just 2 people trying to figure out how to coexist in the aftermath of something terrible. "Can I ask you something?" Ethan said. "Of course." "Why did you really do all this? The investigation, the apologies, all of it? Was it guilt? Legal liability? Genuine belief that it was right?" Clara set down her fork. "Honestly, all of those things. I felt guilty. I was worried about legal exposure, but mostly, I saw my grandfather's company turning into something he would have hated, and I was the one letting it happen. I couldn't live with that. So you burned it down to save it. Something like that." She smiled slightly, still not sure if it worked. "Give it time," Ethan said. "Rome wasn't built in a day." Neither was trust. "No," he agreed. "But you're building it, one day at a time." After lunch, Clara went back to her office and Ethan returned to work. But something had changed in that conversation, a recognition that they were both trying, both figuring it out, both willing to put in the effort. It wasn't friendship yet. Maybe it never would be. But it was mutual respect, and that was enough. Over the following weeks, Ethan settled into a routine that felt like the life he'd been trying to build for years. He worked Monday through Friday, good hours with overtime pay when needed. Picked Mia up from the after-school program he could now afford. Cooked dinner in their kitchen, helped with homework, tucked her in at a reasonable hour. Normal. Stable. Safe. Mia thrived. The fear had left her eyes completely now, replaced by the bright curiosity of a child who knew she could count on tomorrow. She made friends at school, brought home artwork that Ethan hung on the refrigerator, talked endlessly about her day over dinner. "Jenny said her dad works at the same building as you," she announced one evening. "Can we have a play date?" "Sure, baby. I'll talk to her dad." Jenny's dad turned out to be Marcus, one of the other facilities engineers. They arranged for the girls to play while Ethan and Marcus talked over coffee. "Heard you were the one who started all this," Marcus said. "The investigation, I mean." "Not intentionally. I just reported what I saw." "Still, takes guts." Marcus stirred his coffee. "My cousin was one of the people who got fired. Sarah Chen, you know her?" "I met her. The accountant, right?" "Yeah, she came back too. Got her job back, plus compensation. Said Ms. Whitmore apologized personally." Marcus shook his head. "Never thought I'd see the day a billionaire CEO actually gave a damn about regular people." "She's trying," Ethan said. "I'll give her that." "More than trying, man. She changed the whole culture. We've got safety committees now, employee advocates, anonymous reporting systems. Nobody's afraid to speak up anymore. It was true. Ethan had seen it himself, the way people talked openly about problems, the way supervisors listened instead of dismissing concerns, the way the building ran smoother because everyone was invested in making it work. Change was possible. He'd stopped believing that during the worst of it, but now he could see the proof it had. Clara threw herself into rebuilding the company with the same intensity she'd once brought to maximizing profits. But now the metrics that mattered were different: employee satisfaction, retention rates, ethical compliance, community impact. The financial analysts worried. Shareholders grumbled. Some predicted Whitmore Industries would lose its competitive edge. They were wrong. Productivity increased when people felt valued. Innovation flourished when employees weren't afraid to take risks. Customer satisfaction soared when the company's values aligned with its actions. By the end of the quarter, profits were up despite the increased labor costs. Clara presented the results at a board meeting, watching the skeptical faces shift to surprise. "Treating people well is good business," she said simply. "Not in spite of the bottom line, but because of it. Sustainable growth requires sustainable practices. We're proving that." Not everyone was convinced. 2 board members resigned, unable to reconcile their old methods with the new direction. Clara let them go without argument and replaced them with people who shared her vision. Michael became permanent COO. They hired a chief ethics officer, created an independent oversight committee with actual power to investigate complaints. The company transformed slowly but steadily, like a ship changing course. Massive effort for each degree of turn, but ultimately heading somewhere better. One evening, Clara was working late when her assistant buzzed. "There's someone here to see you. Says it's personal." Clara looked up, surprised. "Who?" "Ethan Brooks." Her heart jumped. "Send him in." Ethan entered carrying a small gift bag. He looked nervous, which was unlike him. "Sorry to drop by unannounced," he said, "but I wanted to give you something." Clara stood. "You didn't have to." "I know, but I wanted to." He handed her the bag. Inside was a child's drawing, carefully matted and framed. It showed a building with people working together, smiles on their faces, the sun shining overhead. At the bottom, in careful 6-year-old handwriting, "Thank you for helping my daddy. Love, Mia." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "Ethan, I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything. I just thought you should know that what you did mattered. Not just the money or the job, but the fact that you tried. That you cared enough to fix what was broken." He paused. "Mia wanted you to know that she has her own room now, and she's not scared anymore. She drew that picture to say thank you." Clara looked down at the drawing through blurry eyes. This was what it was all about. Not the profits, or the press coverage, or the board approval. This. A child who was safe and happy because someone chose to do the right thing. "Will you thank her for me?" Clara managed. "Tell her I'm going to hang this in my office where I can see it every day." "I will." They stood there for a moment in comfortable silence. "Ethan," Clara said finally, "can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Do you think you'll ever forgive me? Truly forgive me? Not just accept what happened?" He considered the question carefully. "Honestly, I don't know, but I think I'm starting to. You can't undo what happened, but you're doing everything you can to make it right, and that counts for something. Maybe forgiveness is a process, not a moment. Maybe it's something we build together, one day at a time." "I can live with that." "Yeah," Ethan said with a small smile. "Me too." After he left, Clara hung the drawing on the wall beside her desk, where she'd see it every time she looked up. A reminder of why the work mattered, of who it was all for. 6 months after Ethan's return, Whitmore Industries held its annual company meeting. In the past, these had been formal affairs, executives presenting to employees, top-down communication, carefully scripted remarks. Clara changed the format. The meeting was held in the building's largest conference space, with chairs arranged in a circle instead of auditorium-style rows. Every employee who wanted to attend was invited, from executive leadership to maintenance staff. Clara opened with a simple statement. "This company belongs to all of us, not because we all own stock, we don't, but because we all contribute to making it work. This year, I want to hear from you. What's working? What isn't? What should we change? The room was silent for a moment, people uncertain if the invitation was genuine. Then a woman from accounting raised her hand. The new ethics reporting system is good, but the response time could be faster. Noted, Clara said. We'll work on that. What else? A facilities engineer, one of Ethan's colleagues, spoke up. We need better equipment in the East Wing. The current tools are outdated. Put together a proposal. If it's justified, we'll approve it. More hands went up, more voices, people who'd been silent for years finding the courage to speak. Ethan watched from his seat, seeing the transformation happen in real time. This was what accountability looked like. Not perfection, but honest effort. Not top-down control, but genuine collaboration. During the break, Clara caught his eye across the room and smiled. He nodded back, a simple acknowledgement of how far they'd all come. After the meeting, people lingered in small groups, talking and laughing. The atmosphere felt different, lighter, more hopeful, like they were building something together instead of just surviving it. Tom found Ethan by the coffee station. Things really have changed, haven't they? Yeah, they really have. You think it'll last? Ethan looked across the room at Clara, deep in conversation with a group of warehouse workers who were explaining a logistical concern. She was listening intently, taking notes, asking questions. Yeah, he said. I think it will. That evening, Ethan picked up Mia from her after-school program and took her out for ice cream to celebrate the end of the school year. They sat on a bench in the park, watching the sun set over the city, and Mia swung her legs happily. Daddy, remember when we used to sleep in the truck? Ethan's chest tightened. Yeah, baby, I remember. That was scary. I know it was. I'm sorry you had to go through that. It's okay. She licked her ice cream cone thoughtfully. We're okay now, and I learned something. What's that? That you never gave up. Even when things were really hard, you kept trying. That's what being brave means, right? Ethan pulled her close, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. Yeah, sweetheart, that's exactly what it means. They finished their ice cream and walked home through the warm evening air, hand in hand. Their apartment building came into view. Nothing fancy, just a solid structure with a blue door they'd never gotten around to painting red. Daddy? Mia said as they climbed the stairs. I changed my mind about the door. Yeah? I like it blue. Blue is the color of sky, and sky means there's always tomorrow. Ethan stopped on the landing, looking down at his daughter, who'd been through more hardship at 6 than most people faced in a lifetime, and found wisdom there that humbled him. You're right, he said softly. Blue is perfect. 3 months later, Clara received an invitation to speak at a business ethics conference. The topic was corporate accountability and rebuilding trust after institutional failure. She almost declined. Public speaking still made her nervous, and talking about her mistakes felt uncomfortably personal. But then she thought about all the people who'd shared their stories with her, who'd trusted her with their pain so she could learn from it. She accepted. The day of the conference, Clara stood backstage and reviewed her notes. She'd prepared remarks, statistics about Whitmore Industries' turnaround, data showing that ethical practices and profitability weren't mutually exclusive. But when she walked onto the stage and saw the hundreds of faces in the audience, she set the notes aside. I'm supposed to talk to you about corporate accountability, she began, about systems and oversight and best practices. And I will. But first I want to tell you about Ethan Brooks. She told them the whole story. The termination she'd signed without thinking, the fraud she'd missed, the months Ethan and his daughter spent homeless because of her negligence, the investigation that exposed the rot, the hard work of making amends. I tell you this not to make myself look good, Wushum, Claire said. I don't come out looking good in this story. I'm the person who signed the papers that destroyed a family. I'm the person who was so focused on profit margins that I forgot to see people as people. I'm the villain. She paused, letting that sink in. But I'm also the person who chose to do something about it when I finally saw what was happening. Not because it was easy or profitable or good for my reputation. The shareholders are still mad at me, by the way. But because it was right. And here's what I learned. Accountability isn't about being perfect. It's about being honest when you screw up and then doing the work to fix it. She talked about the changes at Whitmore Industries, the employee protections, the oversight systems, The cultural shift from fear to trust. She shared the data showing improved retention, productivity, and profitability. The business case for ethics is real, she said, but that's not why you should do it. You should do it because the people who work for you are human beings who deserve dignity and respect and the chance to build stable lives. You should do it because your signature on a piece of paper can destroy someone's world, and that's a responsibility you should take seriously. She ended with the drawing Mia had made, projecting it on the screen behind her. This is why it matters, she said quietly. This child was homeless because of me. Now she has a home and a father who can provide for her, and a future that isn't defined by trauma. That's what accountability looks like. Not perfect, but better. Not easy, but necessary. One person, one decision, one day at a time. The applause was deafening. Afterward, dozens of people approached her with questions, stories, their own struggles with corporate ethics and human cost. Clara listened to all of them, exchanged contact information, promised to share resources. It was exhausting and exhilarating in equal measure. On the flight home, she thought about how far she'd come from the woman who'd signed Ethan's termination without a second thought. That person had been focused on abstractions, efficiency, margins, shareholder value. This person understood that behind every number was a name, and behind every name was a life. The transformation hadn't been easy. There were days when Clara still felt overwhelmed by the weight of what she'd done, the lives she'd disrupted. But she'd learned that guilt without action was just self-indulgence. What mattered was showing up every day and doing the work. A year after Ethan's return to Whitmore Industries, the company held a celebration marking the completion of its ethics overhaul. New systems were in place, new leadership was trained, new practices were standard. The event was held in the building's courtyard on a perfect autumn evening, with food and music and an atmosphere of genuine celebration. Employees from every department mingled, sharing stories and laughter. Ethan brought Mia, who was now 7 and growing so fast he could barely keep her in clothes that fit. She ran off to play with other children while he found a quiet corner to observe. Clara found him there, carrying 2 glasses of wine. "Thought you might want this," she said, offering one. "Thanks." They stood together, watching the party unfold. "You know what's strange?" Clara said. "A year ago, I thought I knew what success looked like. Market share, revenue growth, beating projections. Now," she gestured to the celebration around them. "This feels like success. People who trust each other, who feel valued, who want to be here." "It is success," Ethan said. "The kind that matters. I couldn't have done it without you. Without your willingness to come back, to give us a chance to prove we'd changed. That meant everything." Ethan turned to look at her. "You did the hard part. I just showed up." "No, you did more than that. You held us accountable while still believing we could be better. That's grace and strength combined." They were quiet for a moment, watching Mia play with the other children, her laughter carrying on the evening breeze. "She's thriving," Clara observed. "You both are." "Yeah, we are." Ethan smiled. "It's strange, you know. 6 months ago, I would have said there was no way back from what happened, that some things were too broken to fix. But here we are." "Here we are?" Clara echoed. Mia came running over, breathless and excited. "Daddy, can I get face paint, please?" "Sure, sweetheart. Go ahead." She ran off again, and Ethan shook his head fondly. "She asked me the other day if you were my friend," he said. Clara's eyebrows rose. "What did you tell her?" "I told her I wasn't sure yet, that friendship takes time to build." "That's fair." "But," Ethan continued, "I also told her that you're someone who made a mistake and then worked really hard to fix it, and that's the kind of person worth knowing." Clara felt her eyes prickle with tears. "Thank you. That means more than you know." "You've earned it, not all at once, but slowly, over time. That's how trust works." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the celebration continue around them. Somewhere in the crowd, Michael was laughing with the HR team. Tom was deep in conversation with the new facilities hires. Sarah Chen was showing photos of her new house to a group of colleagues. People who'd been broken were healing. Systems that had been corrupt were clean. A company that had lost its way was finding it again. It wasn't perfect. There would be more challenges, more mistakes, more work to do. But they were facing it together, with honesty and commitment and the understanding that accountability was ongoing, not a destination. As the sun set over the city, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Ethan felt something settle in his chest. Peace, maybe. Or just the quiet satisfaction of knowing that tomorrow would come, and they'd all be okay. Mia returned with a butterfly painted on her cheek, chattering excitedly about the snacks table. Clara listened to her with genuine interest, asking questions and laughing at her enthusiasm. Watching them together, Ethan realized that forgiveness wasn't a single moment of declaration. It was this, small interactions, building trust, choosing to move forward together. It was Mia's butterfly and Clara's laughter, and the knowledge that they'd all survived the worst and come out stronger. The party continued into the evening, and when it was time to leave, Mia hugged Clara goodbye without hesitation. "Thank you for the party," she said. "You're very welcome, Mia. Daddy says you're someone who fixes things when they break. That's important." Clara knelt down to Mia's level. "Your daddy is very wise. And you know what? He's someone who fixes things too. Some of the best people I know are fixers." Mia beamed. "I'm going to be a fixer when I grow up. I think you'll be wonderful at it." Walking home through the twilight, Mia's hand in his, Ethan felt the weight of the past year settle into something manageable. The trauma hadn't disappeared. He still sometimes woke in the night, panicking about money or safety before remembering where he was. But those moments were fewer now, replaced by ordinary concerns and simple joys. Their apartment was warm when they entered. Mia got ready for bed, brushing her teeth and putting on pajamas without being asked. Ethan tucked her in, smoothing her hair back from her forehead. "Daddy," she said sleepily, "are we going to be okay forever now?" He thought about how to answer that, about the uncertainty of life, the impossibility of guarantees, the reality that hardship could return without warning. But then he looked at his daughter's trusting face and chose a different truth. "We're going to be okay," he said firmly, "not because nothing bad will ever happen, but because we know how to face it together. We're strong, you and me, stronger than we knew. I love you, Daddy. I love you too, baby, more than anything." She drifted off to sleep, and Ethan sat beside her bed for a long moment, watching her breathe. Then he stood, turned off the light, and walked into the living room of their home. Their home, with its blue door and yellow walls and all the ordinary imperfections that made it theirs. He pulled out his phone and sent a quick text to Clara. "Thank you for tonight, and for everything." Her response came a few minutes later. "Thank you for giving us the chance to do better. Sleep well, Ethan." He set the phone down and looked around the quiet apartment, at the furniture they'd slowly acquired, the photos on the walls, the life they'd rebuilt from nothing. This was redemption. Not dramatic or cinematic, but real and hard-won and worth every moment of struggle. It was Clara choosing accountability over convenience, Ethan choosing trust over fear, Mia choosing joy over trauma. It was all of them choosing to believe that people could change, that systems could improve, that broken things could heal if you cared enough to fix them. Outside, the city hummed with life. Inside, Ethan Brooks stood in his living room and let himself feel something he hadn't felt in over a year. Hope. Not the desperate, grasping hope of survival, but the quiet, steady hope of someone who'd been through the darkness and come out the other side. Tomorrow, he'd wake up and go to work. He'd fix what needed fixing, solve what needed solving, continue building the life he wanted for his daughter. There would be challenges and setbacks and moments of doubt, but there would also be this, the knowledge that he'd survived the worst, that kindness existed even in corporate boardrooms, that accountability was possible when people chose courage over comfort. The sunset had faded completely now, leaving the apartment in gentle darkness, punctuated by the glow of the city outside. Ethan stood at the window, looking out at the lights, and thought about all the people out there fighting their own battles, carrying their own burdens, hoping for their own breakthroughs. He thought about Clara, probably still at her office, working to build something better, about the families still at Hope House, waiting for their chance, about all the people who'd been wronged and were still waiting for someone to care enough to make it right. The work wasn't finished. It never really would be. But it was happening, one person at a time, one decision at a time, one act of courage at a time. And that was enough. Ethan turned away from the window, checked on Mia one more time, and went to bed in his own room, in his own apartment, in the life he'd fought so hard to reclaim. As he drifted off to sleep, his last thought was simple and true. They were going to be okay. Not because everything was perfect, but because they'd learned that falling didn't mean failing. Getting back up did, and they were standing, together, strong, ready for whatever tomorrow brought. The story that had begun with betrayal ended with redemption. Not the kind found in grand gestures or dramatic reversals, but in the quiet accumulation of better choices, honest conversations, and the willingness to believe that change was possible. In a city of millions, one man had been broken and then rebuilt. One woman had been blind and then chose to see. One child had been afraid and then found safety. And in the space between what was and what could be, they'd all discovered something profound. That true leadership wasn't about power preserved, but about lives restored. That dignity mattered more than profit. That accountability, though painful, was the only path to genuine redemption. The lights of the city continued to glow through the night, each one representing a story, a struggle, a hope. And in one small apartment with a blue door, two people slept peacefully, knowing that tomorrow would come, and they would face it together. That was enough. That was everything.